As an engineering manager, one of the questions that I almost always get whenever I'm interviewing an engineer for a position on my team is, what is your management style? And to answer that question, I direct them to this scene from one of my favorite movies, Pulp Fiction. I'm more interested in their response to see what do they actually think. Let me reassure everyone, I've never shot anyone, I've never, violently killed anyone, but people, seriously, I haven't. Or at least not that you can prove. Generally, people focus on the latter part of this speech that Jules gives in the movie. I focus more on the middle piece where I hope to shepherd the weak through the valley of darkness and protect my team. Or at least that's what I tell them. So first, I'd like to start with a few disclaimers on this talk. This is not intended to be a talk where I judge anyone or shame them or preach to them about what they should or shouldn't be doing, but just to share experiences and insights with you. So, dear white people, welcome. Don't be afraid. No. And on that note, while I am going to share some information with you, I am not the fountain of all information about diversity and inclusivity and how to make your organizations better. Just a guy. So if you're looking for more information than what I'm providing to you today, there's this great service out there that I all suggest you check out. I hear they're pretty big and they've been around for a while, so they're probably trustworthy. So finally, there's a few qualifications I'd like to offer for giving this talk. As in the introduction, I am VP of Engineering at NodeSource, the enterprise Node.js company, where we work on contributing to the open source Node.js project as well as building commercial products. Prior to that, I was Director of Engineering at Adobe and worked on multiple products on the Creative Suite and Creative Cloud while I was there. I've got about 20 years of experience in the tech industry, 15 of those years leading software teams, and yes, I've been black all my life, so definitely been managing while black. All right, let's get to it. First, by a show of hands, how many people have ever been pulled over for a routine traffic stop, speeding, running? All right, you're my people. Keep your hands up. Okay, out of all of you with your hands raised, how many of you felt fearful for your safety, that you might be threatened as the officer approached your car? Okay, a few hands went down. Good. All right, put your hands down now. I named this talk Managing While Black based on the warning/advice that my wife would always give me every time I go out to a meetup or a conference, usually late in the evening, and she'd say, look, have a good time, but be careful. They will pull you over for driving while black. And for those of you who are not familiar with the concept of driving while black, it's when a police officer notices a black person driving in a particular area, pulls them over to find out what they're doing. Why are you in this area? Is this your vehicle? Which I'm like, you're going to find out in 2 seconds when I hand the registration over. But it's a very common occurrence. And the questions that an officer might ask you don't seem necessarily threatening when you ask anyone like, is this your car? Where are you going? They're fairly non-threatening, but in reality, it depends on your context, who you are, what your background is, the context of that situation. In many incidents involving people of color and the police, a common reaction from white people is generally, well, if they weren't doing anything wrong, they have nothing to fear. They wouldn't have been pulled over. They wouldn't have been arrested. They wouldn't have been shot. And I can understand why some people would get angry about those responses because it's obviously not true, but you have to understand where people are coming from when they have that response, that their experiences are different than yours. The systems that they've grown up with are different than the systems you've grown up with. And in your day-to-day life at work, there are similar fears in the way that you interact with people in your company, people on your teams, the people who manage you. The fear that you're going to experience there might be fear of being reprimanded, fear of being ostracized, or losing your livelihood. There was this series called The Blacklist where a lot of people of color, usually affluent, prominent people in the community, talked about their experiences, and the one with Chris Rock stood out to me the most because this one phrase that he brought up sort of resonated with me in all my experiences in my career. And he said, there's always going to kind of be an overreaction, one way or the other, regarding your presence, be it good or bad. And that hit home for me because I've definitely generated a lot of overreaction, whether good or bad. And I think this is the experience of a lot of people of color in the tech industry and how they interact. For background, I think a lot of people my age had similar experiences. At the time that I was coming up in the industry, Steve Jobs and Bill Gates were my heroes. They were the people I looked up to and that I wanted to be like. Maybe more Steve than Bill in later years, but in the early days, they were the people that were most prominent and most visible to me. I didn't really know a lot of black software developers or tech leaders, and there really weren't any for me to emulate. However, this didn't really pose a problem for me because I attended a private Catholic school in Brooklyn. As I was growing up, I was surrounded by white people almost all the time, and this just was normal to me. It didn't feel like anything was out of place. I was used to being the other or the only in those situations. The downside was when I'd go home, I lived in a black neighborhood, so all my friends were black, and they generally accused me of trying to be white or selling out because, I went to this nice school and, I was focused on being smart and getting into computers. They didn't see that as something that black kids did. And I made my peace with that because, from my perspective, I didn't sell out, I bought in. This was what I wanted to do. I liked being in tech. I liked programming. I liked all of these things, and I didn't feel any shame about it. So if they couldn't accept it, that's fine, but this is what I'm going to do. And I've pretty much followed that path my entire career as a developer, working for a lot of small companies, until I finally ended up at Adobe. And massive disclaimer here, the stories I'm about to tell is not sour grapes. I love Adobe, I had a great experience there, so please don't go tweeting out that Kevin's hating on Adobe, because I don't. But I spent about 10 years there, and a good portion of my experiences were rooted in that environment, so those are the ones I'd like to share with you. I'm going to tell 3 short stories. So first, I started at Adobe right at the end of the development of Creative Suite 2 and at the beginning of Creative Suite 3. And I was managing the installer engineering team. So the setup at Adobe was all the product teams built their individual products, but there were these shared technology groups that would provide components to them, including the installers. And the product teams would get installers by having an engineer for each platform for each product. So Photoshop had a Windows install engineer and a Mac install engineer. InDesign, Illustrator, the same thing. And one of the leads on my team said, this is crazy, we're never going to be able to scale this way. And he proposed a project to build a compiler that was cross-platform to build the installers for the products, which sounded like a great idea. My plan originally was, let's prototype this in Creative Suite 3, try it out with a few products in one suite, and we'll launch it for the next major release cycle. Unfortunately, like Mike Tyson so wisely said many years ago, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. And we got punched in the face with the acquisition of Macromedia. So now we have way more products in, the decision to build way more suites, and same schedule. So we were basically told, you have to build this installer compiler, build all the installers, all in the same cycle as CS3. Oh, and you don't get any more people, you don't get any more resources of any kind, just do it. So with my 2 engineers, because all the other engineers were still wrapping up their previous work, we started this project. And along the way, after the acquisition, we were told, this is the most important project in the company. No pressure. Along the way, we had a few milestones, like the first public beta of Photoshop. So we had to build this installer in time for that public beta while staying on schedule. Landmine after landmine, but still, we shipped it. We managed to complete the project, reduce the amount of time it took to build installs for all the products. Everything was great. Parade for everybody. Or that's what you would think. At the end of this project, I got a lot of feedback. One of those was, I need to work on my personal brand. Because you see, in order to ship that project on time, I had to say no to a few people. I might have told a few people where they could go to get the job done. Probably not the best advice I would give to anybody. Don't tell a chief architect where he can go. But I basically was just emulating the things that I saw around me, my peers, upper level managers, the way they were behaving. I really wasn't doing anything different than they were doing, but it wasn't okay for me to do it. So my reward for shipping on time and not costing the company millions of dollars, every day we were late shipping this, was to get half my team taken away and to get shoved in a corner and not have any responsibilities for about a year, which gave me a lot of time to reflect. So as I reflected, the few people I had left, we worked on the next versions of the suites, helped other teams out where we could, and I started thinking, well, what do I want to do next? First thing, don't want to work on installers ever again, so let's find something else to do. And because we were in a core technology group, I started looking around and said, hey, we should be doing more with services. Adobe has all this IP. We should be doing something like AWS for Adobe. And there's got to be something there. And since I'm not an imaging expert or a font expert, I looked at our metadata technologies and said, hey, let's build a metadata service that all the products can plug into. But this time, I'm going to do it a little bit differently. So first time around, I'm going to be me. I'm going to say blunt things and get in trouble. This time, I'm going to pull it back, and I'm going to try and conform and act the way that people expect me to act. So I started looking around for teams to partner with. There was a team that was actually building something that needed the service we were creating, and I said, great, my team will help you out, we'll become part of your team, we'll help you succeed. And they said, great. We dropped our code name, adopted theirs, got the t-shirts made and everything, because you have to make the t-shirt before you actually ship a product. Apparently that's a rule somewhere. And the CTO got a hold of what we were doing and said, this is what we're going to do. This is the most important project in the company. I'm sensing a trend here. We did our part, built the service, we integrated with a lot of products, and we noticed after a while that the sponsor project was sort of going back and forth. They didn't know what problem they were trying to solve. I'm like, all right, this probably won't end well, but we're just going to keep doing our thing, and we're going to be good partners to these teams. And right before Creative Suite 5.5 shipped, they canceled the sponsor project. But since we were already integrated with some of the other products, they said, you guys are shipping. So success, right? Partnered well, we did all the right things, shipped. I'm getting a new t-shirt. Well, the result was probably a little bit better. At least people's reaction to my communication style improved, I think, because people think this is actually a compliment. But once again, we got caught up in the reorg shuffle. Again, they took away some of my team, which I never get. I'm like, you build a good team, you do some first reaction, split the team up. So this is about 6 years in. I'm like burnt, ready to go. I'm like, I'm done with this place. I'm tired of doing all the work, working on the most important projects in the company, not getting anywhere. And I'm watching people get promoted for putting a web front end on a MySQL database. Okay. Then one day, opportunity literally knocked on my door. A coworker of mine came up, said, hey, there's this cool new project going on. You would totally be the right guy to lead this. And I'm like, dude, I'm going down to the bar, getting a beer, and I'm out of here. It's like, no, go talk to the head of engineering for this project. You want to be on this project. Fine. So I trudge down, I know who's running the project, and he starts telling me, hey, it's about mobile, and this is about cloud, and we're going to do a whole bunch of new stuff. Okay. You have my attention. It tells me a little bit more, and by the time we're done with the conversation, I'm talking myself into, I want this job. And the fact that it was for a senior engineering management position, I was like, oh, and I get the promotion as a bonus, so twofer, great. Well, this project ended up being Adobe Creative Cloud, which I did not know at the time. So, I look at the situation and say, once again, I have no team, a big audacious goal in front of me, and I also inherited a team as part of this. I was working on another project that while they were working on a service, they really weren't. They were building a Flash front end to acrobat.com. And so they actually knew nothing about continuous integration, continuous deployment, Git, like any of the technologies that we would have had to use to build this service, they knew nothing, so they were all green. No problem, until the CTO once again, hey, that project looks interesting. I'm going to take that over. It is now the most important project in the company. And he said, by the way, this was at the end of 2010, we have to launch this for the Adobe Max conference in October in 2011. Sure, no problem. So I stepped back and I was sort of at a fork in the road. So in the first project, I said, I'm going to be me. I'm going to run this my way. I'm going to do things the way I normally do it. And I got smacked down for that. Second time around, I conformed. I tried to do what people expected from me. That didn't turn out so hot either. So which way am I going to go this time? Well, I'm from Brooklyn, so I tend to do the things that Brooklyn people do, which is we're just going to say screw it, and we're going to do whatever the hell we want to do. But this time I also decided I'm going to amp it up a little bit. I'm like, they're going to judge me one way or the other, and I'd rather do things my way and succeed my way than worry about how people are going to perceive me in this company. But I am going to make sure that they know that not only can I do what they've asked me to do, I can go beyond it. And with that, I assembled some of the folks from my previous teams and said, we're going to bootstrap this new team and we're going to teach them everything they need to know in order to build a service while we're doing it. And that's exactly what we did over the summer of 2011. And meantime, while they were doing that, my job was to be the chief cheerleader, was to go and work with all the product teams, to go to all the employee meetings until people got tired of hearing my team's name being mentioned, because I just wanted them to know this is the most important thing in the company and these are the people who are doing it. And by October, we managed to launch. We were all in the LA conference convention center. My entire team's in the audience, seeing their work being thrown up on the screen. They're all like cheering, and a few people were crying. I was not one of them, or at least that's what I'm going to say. And that was why we did it. We wanted to build something, feel a success. Everybody was happy about that. So there was much drinking and partying going on afterwards. Also memorable for this, that we launched this 2 days before Steve Jobs passed away. So it was a very emotional week for all of us. But when we got back to the office, we were like, all right, there's still more to do. And I noticed that several of my peers were getting pulled into meetings and they were getting promotions, because this wasn't just another, quote unquote, biggest project in the company. We were literally changing the entire business model of Adobe. That made it the biggest thing going on at the time. So deservedly so. Lots of people were getting promoted, except one person. And I asked, my management chain, like, hey, great for so-and-so, totally support that. Any reason why I'm not in line for one as well? And there was some hand-wavy answers and stuff, and said, well, we're not done yet. We really have to get everything onto the subscriptions for next year, so focus on that, but you totally deserve it. You've earned it. You should get that promotion. Okay. Worked another 6 to 8 months. We launched the next version of Creative Cloud. Company started making a ton of money. One of the people that got the promotion last time around got another promotion. Like, good for you, man. It's great. Fantastic. Hello, anybody? And the response to that was, well, we're going to move you over to this group, and this person will take care of that. And then like, no, we'll move you over here, and this person will take care of that. And finally, I settled down under one manager a few months later and asked him, like, all right, so here are all these VPs, directors saying, you've earned this promotion because without you, we wouldn't have been able to launch Creative Cloud. And his answer to me was simply, he doesn't see me in that role. Okay. And I pressed a little bit to say, well, could you tell me why? Like, where am I lacking? What do I need to work on? Of course, I'm here thinking, you just made a crap ton of money. I'm thinking a little promotion's not costing you anything, but really couldn't give me an answer. And that sort of just fixated in my head for a while. Because you see, at that time, and pretty much for the entire time I've been at Adobe, the percentage of black people working in engineering at Adobe has hovered around 1%. Now, I've always stated I want to be a member of the 1%. I really do. But that 1%, I'm always going to be a member of. I mean, can't change that, and I don't want to. But it was hard, working on 3 projects considered the most important ones in the company, not getting recognized for it. Getting a seat at the table, being in meetings with VPs, senior VPs, being the only one there, having to explain things like, why is the service going down, or why are we using this technology, giving an explanation and getting that look where like, I'm not sure I can trust what you're saying, and ask the person next to me the same question, get the same answer, and all of a sudden that's okay. That was my experience. The thing is that, I was paying attention to the entire topic of diversity this whole time, and Paul Judge, who's an entrepreneur, venture capitalist, and technologist, wrote a piece in TechCrunch, I think in 2012, entitled Greed Trumps Race. And 2 thoughts that he brought out were, first, specifically, greed trumps race, that if you're facing what appears to be racism or discrimination in the workplace, focus more on the ROI for the company. Focus more on what they care about, which is money. That's the only color that matters. But the second point that he made was what we, as people of color, may perceive as racism is really underrepresentation. That the behaviors and responses that we get from people are just due to a lack of familiarity. They don't have black people in their teams, in their companies, in their lives, so they don't know how to relate to us in a way that would be sensible. So I took that and started thinking about, how do I apply this to the things that matter as a leader or a manager in a company? And in that role, you generally have 3 vectors that you have to work with. The first is you have to manage down, you obviously have to manage up, and you have to manage across. So let's start with managing down, because that's frankly easier in a lot of ways. And I've always seen my job as a manager is, if I'm building a team, I'm building the Avengers. I want my team to be the Avengers because, one, they're obviously very powerful. They're definitely diverse, a lot. Race, gender, age. Captain America is like 80-something years old, just in case you didn't know. And he kicks ass. But unlike this year's Marvel blockbuster, your job is also to make sure that they don't go to civil war. You really don't want this result on your own teams. So as part of building teams, the common thread that you hear time and time again is, well, we can't have diverse teams because there's a pipeline problem. Anybody believe there's a pipeline problem? Show of hands. Okay. Well, there is no pipeline problem. What we do have, however, is a networking problem. The problem is that the networks that exist in startups and established companies do not extend out to where people of color are. And you can say that's a problem, or you can do something about it. First you could go to those places. Or you can leverage the fact that you have people of color in your leadership teams that are now part of your network, and they have networks. And why aren't you tapping and taking advantage of them? The other aspect is, look at changing the ways that nodes get added to the network. The current hiring and recruiting methods don't work. And unfortunately, what I see over and over again, companies doing the same things over and over again, expecting different results. It's not going to work. I am glad to see that companies like Gap Jumpers and others are experimenting with the blind audition model in terms of recruiting people. I think that's a novel approach. I haven't tried it myself, but I'd like to. And I am a fan of The Voice, so it's definitely something that I can get behind. But we need to do more things like that to change the ways that we reach out to people. So that's managing down. As for managing up, hopefully you don't have to work for this guy. Nice tie, but that's about it. But some of you may have to deal with people above you that aren't as enlightened, probably have a very narrow point of view. And once again, I'd go back to what Paul Judge was saying about focus on what the business actually cares about. If you just go into someone like this and bang the table about diversity and we need to have more women and more black people, more Hispanics, all you're going to hear from him in his head is wah, 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 wah. Right? You have to hit them with data and research. So there was report thrown out by McKinsey in 2008 saying that companies with a strong commitment to diversity on average outperform their peers with higher profit margins and greater returns on equity and assets. That'll get somebody's attention. Or the American Sociological Review said companies with greater racial and gender diversity perform better in terms of sales, revenue, number of customers, and market share. Okay, money. Everybody understands money. Your leaders understand money. Those are the types of arguments you have to make when you're pursuing increased diversity and inclusivity in your companies. Those are the things that resonate with them. Finally, managing across. Now, you already are probably working with people from other divisions, departments, cross-functional areas, and the thing that I found most encouraging is that they probably want to work with you as well. They all want to succeed. And the thing is, diversity has been found to make us smarter, that by working with people with different ideas, come from different backgrounds, it enhances creativity. In fact, there's a whole concept called informational diversity. When people are brought together to solve problems in groups, they bring different information, opinions, and perspectives. And as I've worked with designers and product managers and program managers, whether they're women, Latino, African American, their experiences when they bring that to solve a particular problem have changed the way I've thought about the problem and has changed the way the product develops. And that's something that I don't think enough companies in tech actually focus on. You know, they pick a problem they want to solve. They have a very homogeneous group of people solving this problem. They are selling this product to a very homogeneous group of people, and then wonder, well, why can't we make more revenue? Let's pick my favorite product, Twitter. Love Twitter. I'm on Twitter all the time. Probably wonder how I get any work done based on the amount of time that I'm on Twitter. But Twitter is huge with African Americans and Hispanics. Anyone want to guess how many black people work at Twitter?
Would that be 1%?
There's a few more than 2, but not much more. And that's part of the problem, that there are so many things going on Twitter in the black community and the Hispanic community that Twitter themselves are not taking advantage of. You know, if Nicki Minaj says something, it blows up in quote unquote black Twitter. The rest of Twitter doesn't pay any attention to it. And a lot of that is due to the fact that they don't have a diverse product team that can clue them into these signals that would make them make their product better. That's what we need to work on, is how do we get more people from more diverse backgrounds onto these product teams, influencing these products and getting them out to a larger market. So going back to that, how do you get your upper management's attention? Just throw out total addressable market. They love that phrase, TAM, the TAM. Well, if you want to increase your total addressable market, you got to make something that's appealing to the total addressable market, not just the narrow one you're focusing on. So when I started this talk, I mentioned that I didn't really have anyone to look up to as I was coming up in the industry. It was basically Bill and Steve were it. But things have changed over time. Now there are people like Marco Rogers, great engineering manager. Follow him on Twitter, he's great. Brian Lyles from DigitalOcean. I had the pleasure of meeting him a couple of years ago at GopherCon. Great guy and definitely an inspiration to me. Our own conference chair, Kelsey Hightower. That's enough said. I don't even have to say anything more about Kelsey. From the business perspective, Paul Judge definitely influenced me with that post in TechCrunch. And finally, Hank Williams, who was a founder of Platform.org and was in the CNN special Black in America talking about minorities trying to get into tech, who unfortunately passed away this past November. I had the pleasure of meeting him before he passed, and he's been a friend and mentor. So things have changed. There are people who are succeeding in our industry, who are moving ahead. And what I'd like to leave you all with is, since I started with Samuel L. Jackson in one movie, I had to end with him in another because it's Samuel L. Jackson, and I want to be him when I grow up. So here he is as Colonel Nick Fury in Captain America: The Winter Soldier, and he's having a conversation with Captain America, about this weapon that his organization SHIELD has built that can, quite frankly, wipe out everyone on the planet. And Cap's a little concerned about this because, that's a disconcerting notion that you can pretty much wipe everybody out on the planet. And Fury's basically trying to explain to him, look, we're doing this to protect everyone, relax, it's cool. And Cap's not convinced. And Fury tells him something that I found insightful. He said, SHIELD deals with the world the way it is, not the way we wish it to be. And I thought that was a really profound statement because I kind of see things that way myself. There is discrimination, there is racism, there are all these systems that are preventing inclusivity and from all of us working together in a really productive way. And there's nothing that I, by myself, am going to do that's going to change that overnight. I'm realistic about that. So every day when I wake up, I'm dealing with the world the way it is. But that doesn't mean I can't hope for and work towards things being better. It's a damn shame that the same talks that my dad had to have with me about how to behave in public, how to act around certain people, including the police, the fact that, hey, when the cop pulls you over, make sure you have your hands at 10 and 2 and don't make any sudden moves, is the same advice I'm going to have to give my 9-year-old son because nothing's changed. And that's kind of discouraging. There are times where I'm just like, I can't believe this, but that's the way it is. That doesn't mean that I'm giving up and that I'm not going to do things to help maybe inspire other people who want to be in the tech industry and are growing up. Doesn't mean that I'm not going to work in my own organizations to change things. I'm just going to be pragmatic about, here's what the world is, here's what I want it to be, these are the things I'm going to do to change it. So that's what I'd like to leave you all with today is accept the world for the way it is today. It is what it is. But don't lose hope that we can't change things and make the world the way we want it to be. Thank you. Questions? I'm also K Stewart on Twitter, so you can always feel free to hit me up there as well.
You said that you needed to work on the things that the company wants and focus on that, but I think Adobe would want you to ship products and make money, and it sounds like you kicked the hell out of shipping products and making money, and yet you still weren't getting the advancement. I guess what can you do what do you have to do beyond that?
So that's a great question. So the question is, if I was shipping products and helping them make money, what else do you need to do? My mom always told me it's not what you say, but how you say it. And you do have to be cognizant of how you do things with an organization. So, yes, the focus absolutely should be on building the products, shipping the products, finding new opportunities for your company. But you also have to be sensitive to existing norms. So say in that first project with Creative Suite 3, I probably wasn't overly sensitive to people who had established positions, who were recognized leaders. I just laser focused on the mission at hand, which was ship this thing. So, that is great on one hand, and that project was deemed an engineering success, but a political nightmare because of the people's toes that I stepped on. What I've learned from that is just to take more of a lay of the land and understand, who the players are, what are the landmines that I should avoid. I mean, this is politics. But if you can successfully navigate that while staying focused on shipping the product, leads to greater success. Yes.
Thank you so much for your talk. It was amazing.
Thank you.
So inspiring. Not just your talk, but your life story. So thank you for sharing it with us today.
Thank
Your
you.
story. So I am really inspired by your focus on dealing with the world as it is. New way of thinking about things for me. And I'm not good at office politics at all. I'm the one who charges ahead as well. But what really disturbed me about your talk and what I'd like to know if you have any advice for is when it was happening over the course of 6+ years that you were killing it and not getting that recognition, there were colleagues who were being promoted and were seeing that happen to you. How can I be aware of that in my own workplace so that if I see what's happened to you happen happening to another extremely talented person, is there a way I can like advocate for them or say this is BS? Or again, knowing that I'm not good at office politics,
Yeah.
like
Sure.
I'm going to answer that question because sometimes an ally's job is just to shut up and listen. You
Yes.
know? Like, I'm not going to trigger your experience for you. I'm just going to shut up and listen.
Right.
But then, you know, as a member of a different kind of minority, which is woman and man, right? How can we,
yeah, like if I was the colleague that got promoted twice while you didn't over that period, like I would be okay with that. So is there
Yeah.
room to say, hey, I'm not okay with that?
It depends. You know, I hesitate answering this because I don't want to get anybody in trouble. So, and I'd say, you know, take care of yourself first, because depending on your organization, some people may be open to hearing your feedback on this, and others aren't. The best, you know, help that I got from my colleagues, the ones who got promoted, and others who are just supportive, you know, yeah, they took me out for a beer and they listened to me gripe about whatever problem I had, and sometimes that was good enough. Definitely one of the people who got promoted was my counterpart in product management, and she spoke up for me. She was like, you know, this is BS that Kevin's not getting the promotion. That didn't work out so well for her in the long run. And while I appreciate it, and she's still a dear friend to this day, I feel bad because, you know, she stood up for what she believed in, and she basically got canned for it. So I can't tell you to go out and, you know, be the champion for your friends, because it can affect your livelihood. So I'd say the best thing you can do is, you know, one, know what your organization is like, know who the players are and how they respond to things before you do something like that. And then if it looks tenuous from your perspective, just be there for your friend and your colleague and take care of them as best you can. You're welcome. Yes.
Yeah. What's your experience been like identifying mentors, both within your corporate structure and outside your corporate structure?
The honest answer? It's hard as hell. I was looking for mentors since I started as a tech lead and a manager, and the honest answer is that very few people stepped up to take me on and help guide me. I mean, I learned the hard way. I screwed up. I effed up in a lot of ways before someone finally pulled me aside and said, look, here's what you're doing wrong. And, you know, it's kind of concerning that there aren't more mentors out there to help the people avoid these really easily avoidable pitfalls, but they just weren't, and at least not when I was coming up. There are more now. The only advice I have right now is sort of, again, pay attention to the people around you, look for the people who resonate the most with you, and don't force yourself on them because, you know, people get freaked out by that, like, oh, please be my mentor, and then, you know, they get a restraining order against you or something. But pay attention within your company. Who are the people that appear to be successful? Try and look for the cues for why they're being successful. A lot of times it's not the reason you think. It's not always the most technical person that does this, not always the most politically savvy person. Everyone has a different superpower that they're bringing to the table, which puts them in the position that they're in. So trying to look for what those clues are, and then, you know, start a conversation with them. Try to understand, you know, based on your situation, what advice they might have for you. But definitely ease into it. Yes?
So now that you've worked in 21 companies, I know I'm pretty sure you probably, or at least try to have a diverse team and group. What differences based upon your past experiences do you take into your new experience in keeping the team, I guess, cohesive? Because I'm sure there's times that come up where someone voice goes unheard or something indirectly happens that can be deemed, I guess, racist. How do you, because now the tables is turned, right? How do you take your experiences and deal with that?
It's a great question. So the first thing I do is I've obviously developed a much thicker skin over the last few years. And at NoteSource, I actually was blessed with a more sensitive team. I actually had my engineers coming and saying, hey, are you going to actually like increase diversity of this company because we're full of white guys? And I was like, okay, guess I'm not going to have any friction here. And having that support from the organization as a whole definitely changes things. Actually, this past week, I hired the first woman on the engineering team. I made an offer this week. I have a few others that I'm interviewing right now. So I'm leading by example. I'm, basically backing up everything that I just talked about, that I'm trying to reach out to networks, expand NodeSource's network to other groups, and pull them in. That is the only way that I see that I can make change, is by walking the walk and talking the talk. And I'm going to keep doing that.
So, kind of one more question.
Great.
Yeah, well, I just would comment on kind of on the being an ally. It's usually better to be more proactive from being an ally than reactive. If you wait till promotion cycles are in place, these are locked in, right? So along the way, someone should have said during a status meeting, hey, Kevin did a great job. If there's a lunch or the manager going out to, hey, should Kevin come along? Being an ally is a marathon, not a sprint. You got to do it along the way, not at the end.
Couldn't have said it any better myself, and I didn't. So, great. If anybody wants to talk to me afterwards, I'm here, so please feel free to come up and chat. Thank you so much.